Hi, I'm Pat Kiernan. Glad you could be with us for today's edition of Pat's Papers. We go through the nation's newspapers to bring you the highlights. Here's our top story today.
After a couple of days where Illinois politics was our top story, we are back to Detroit today. It was, as many of the papers were going to press, that the auto industry bailout came unraveled in Washington. The Detroit Free Press says Republicans insisted on auto worker wage concessions by the end of next year. This puts Ford and GM in danger of collapsing as early as next month. The story says the industry is now looking to President Bush to step in with money that he does have immediate discretion over. Not that Governor Rod Blagojevich in Illinois is far from the spotlight today. The Chicago Tribune says it is time to remove the scandal-plagued governor from office. The Trib editorial board spells out the process by which the Illinois General Assembly should declare the governor unfit to have him removed. The editorial says, what part of even the next president of the United States says go away? Doesn't he understand? The Tribune's front page headline is Quinn, impeach now. The Lieutenant Governor, Pat Quinn, changing his mind, calling for a quick impeachment. Further down the page, there's an exclusive about how Jesse Jackson Jr. was part of a fundraiser in October to raise up to $1 million for Governor Blagojevich's campaign fund. The Washington Post front page includes a story about how President-elect Barack Obama had worked to distance himself from his home state governor recently. The Post notes that they have not talked for over a year. One former congressman says the governor was perhaps the only American public office holder who didn't speak at the convention, and that wasn't by accident. In newspapers across the country, as here in the LA Times, obituaries for Betty Page, the one-time pinup icon, was 85 years old. The Times says one of the photos that made her famous. The obituary calls here the brunette pinup queen with shoulder-length page boy hairdo and kitschy bangs. Well, you can't quite say that it never snows in New Orleans, but not very often. The Times-Picayune reporting that it was only the 8th measurable snowfall since 1947 in New Orleans, the first since that memorable Christmas Day snowfall in 2004. Around midday yesterday, at least 83,000 homes and businesses in the state were without power. It could add up to a $50 billion fraud. The New York Post says Bernard Madoff was turned in by his sons ahead of his own intention to turn himself in for running a scheme that the story says may end up being a bigger fraud than Enron. Prosecutors suspect he was paying some investors with money that was put into his fund by new investors. That was adding up debt upon debt that there's no way he can repay. An SEC filing had claimed the fund had $17 billion in assets. The criminal complaint says there might have only been 200 or 300 million of that left. The story in the New York Times on this calls it a vast fraud, perhaps the largest in Wall Street history. The Times says Madoff was a legend on Wall Street, a man who had built a trading powerhouse over 4 decades. USA Today, a front-page illustration of a house about to fall off a cliff. The headline is, Why Home Values May Take Decades to Recover. The story charts the price of a typical American home since the 1950s. One investment firm president says, we will never see these prices again in our lifetimes. A story about the economy on the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer today. Even the horsey set is feeling the pinch. Although the story notes it's often not the wealthiest clients of horse traders or stables who are cutting back. It is the middle-class riders who are probably already pressed to afford their passion. Also on the front page of the Inquirer, Bryn Mawr College is looking to become the first U.S. women's college to set up shop in the Middle East. Looking at a campus in Abu Dhabi, some faculty and students have concerns that setting up shop there clashes with the elite school's history of feminism. The Baltimore Sun says changes may come in the final weeks of the Bush administration for poultry farms. The Environmental Protection Agency is moving ahead with a policy to exempt these farms from the type of environmental reporting normally required from industry. The manure at poultry farms generates huge amounts of ammonia and other pollutants. The poultry industry says this is a natural and harmless release of gas. To the Wall Street Journal, a story about retailers still standing. Bankruptcies may be a long-term benefit for these stronger companies in a particular segment because they won't have as much competition. But in the short term, it means a bankrupt competitor may be having a big liquidation sale that is tough to match. Also in the Journal, a story about an unlikely television ratings hit at a time when sitcoms have not done well. The Big Bang Theory on CBS is one of only 4 new comedies this year. The Journal's John Jurgensen says the show's premise is simple, taking those with a huge IQ but no aptitude for social niceties and putting them into situations where comedy follows. The New York Times says bright colors are returning to ski hills across America this year. The Times has a roundup of some ski fashions and some integrated ski technology like the gloves that have a Bluetooth button built in. so you can make a call from the slopes without fumbling to dial your cell phone. And maybe they've reached the limit. Maybe 5 trips to Phoenix in 7 years is too much. Ohio State has had great football success. It's been a fixture at the Fiesta Bowl, but the Columbus Dispatch says today Ohio travel agents who filled 3 charter planes with fans will be lucky to fill 1 this year. Fans say the economy is a concern, but others say they would have found the money had the team been going somewhere different for a change of pace, to the Rose Bowl or to the Orange Bowl. They just didn't want to make the same trip to Arizona.
And that's a report for today. I'm Pat Kiernan. We do this every day. patspapers.com is where you will find the complete list of all of the stories we featured today, along with links to the individual newspaper websites.